South Point offers all the types of entertainment you'd expect at a first-class Las Vegas resort. Did you know our 400-seat showroom is one of Las Vegas's top destinations for live entertainment? Enjoy live performances by classic Vegas entertainers, bands, and today's hottest comedians, plus a rock and dance floor. You can also enjoy live entertainment at the Grand View Lounge, where you'll feel all the vibes of old Las Vegas. Enjoy the music, and if you love to laugh, don't miss The Dirty at 12:30, our very own free comedy show. Every Friday night at 12:30 a.m. in the Grand View Lounge. The Dirty is 100% free, so arrive early. Go to southpointcasino.com or call the box office at 77136 for today's performances at the showroom and the Grand View Lounge. When you're ready for your favorite cocktail, stop in and unwind at one of our 7 specialty lounges. There's a bar around every corner, because you're in Vegas, baby. South Point Casino has plenty of attractions for the whole family. Catch a movie. Our 16-screen movie theater includes 2 XD Extreme screens for the ultimate in viewing, sound, and luxury. After the show, treat the family to a variety of treats at our old-fashioned ice cream parlor, Kate's Corner. We scoop up a variety of creamy concoctions, including smoothies, hand-dipped cones, milkshakes, malts, sodas, and sundaes. At Kate's, there's something for everyone. And if you've still got time to spare, our bowling center might be right up your alley. Voted Best of Las Vegas, it's a great place for friends and family fun. 64 lanes, a pro shop, snack bar, and arcade. And while the kids are bowling, you can play slots and sip on a drink in the Alley Cat Lounge while overlooking the lanes. For our more serious and professional bowlers, the South Point is also home to a separate tournament bowling plaza.
It's Sports by the Book at the South Point Studio. Here's Jeff Parles and Alex White.
Welcome in. It is Sports by the Book here on a Saturday morning. New, fresh time for us. We're happy to be with you as always. Jeff Parles, Alex White alongside. Good morning, Alex.
Good morning. How are you doing?
You know what? It was weird. The alarm went off at a different time this morning, so it was all good. Yeah. We're happy to be with you as always. We have an hour, as we always do. A lot to get to. 2 divisional round games today. We'll have 2 divisional round games tomorrow that we will break down at the normal time tomorrow. We're back at 9 a.m. On Sunday, as we always are. And, of course, we'll also have some thoughts on the national championship game tomorrow. But today, Texans, Chiefs, Commanders, Lions, and a whole bunch of college basketball. And our good friend Danny Burke will join us a little later in the program. And, you know, we can hit it right here, right out of the gate, Alex, and we can go right to Kansas City, Missouri. They were lined up already to tailgate outside Arrowhead. The tradition, unlike any other, 8 hours before kick. Alex, you're Vegas through and through. It's currently 19 degrees in Kansas City right now. You're shaking your head for everyone at home with her not on camera at the moment. Now she is, but 19 degrees by kick. It'll be a beautiful 24 by kickoff. Alex White. Wind about 10 miles an hour. Texans very rarely play games in these temperatures. Just the nature of playing in the AFC South, playing in a dome. It was cold in Nashville the final week in the season, but it wasn't this cold for the Texans. Now, granted, their starters played 1 drive. So, Alex, 8.5 is where we're at right now. With Kansas City laying it. It was 8 at the open. The total's been been hit a little further, 43 to 41.5. What are we initially looking at here? Is we're about 5 hours from kick at Arrowhead Stadium here.
I couldn't resist, Jeff, here at this 8.5. I'm going for a middle here.
You're going, nice.
I have both sides of this teaser tied up with other games that we will get into. But yeah, Chiefs -2.5 and the Texans getting 14.5. It's a good number here from both sides, especially. You can't really argue when people say take the points with the Texans because the Chiefs have not been covering these big numbers. I just worry that with the rest, and we've seen this team do it before, they can easily cover this 8.5. Houston, very good last week, especially defensively. We don't really know. Joe Mixon's a little bit beat up now, and they really relied on him last week. Will not have him in full strength, and their offense has just not been the same. And we know there's no Tank Dell and just relying on Nico Collins. We'll get into some props, though. I do think there are a few, especially from the Texans side for me anyways, but yeah, I'm going for both. I like the Chiefs to win this game. If you made me play here at the spread too, I'd lean more to the Chiefs covering this number than the Texans, but getting over 2 touchdowns, I couldn't resist either.
I love it. Just going for the teaser middle here today. And look, Vinny, and yesterday Jimmy was with us for the whole hour. Chris was a little bit under the weather yesterday, so it was Vinny and Jimmy and I. And Vinny brought up just like these games, especially now with it looking like the Commanders are getting bet on here this morning. These games are going to be big, gigantic teaser games across the board, just based on where these numbers are at here this weekend in the NFL, where this game, I mean, we don't normally talk about teasing big underdogs up. We very rarely talk about that. But you are doing it going through the 14, which, look, key number. 2 touchdowns, and especially for a Kansas City team that does not blow out opponents, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And then the flip side, 8.5 to 2.5 is like the most traditional favorite teaser there is at this point.
And of course, you want to look at the total, right? So such a low total. You just talked about the weather. If this was the Lions and Commanders, I'd be a little bit more nervous with such a high total, but low total. We know the Chiefs, if they do get a lead, they are going to run out the clock in the second half and might have a chance for a backdoor cover there with the Texans. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. I haven't really heard anybody call for the Texans outright win. You see that happening in any way? No, I do not. Of all the 4 teams that we'll hit Baltimore, Buffalo tomorrow. We're about 24 hours from, or closer to 36 in that one, but I still have no idea what the hell is going to happen in that Baltimore-Buffalo game. No idea whatsoever. But of the 3 games, I feel pretty confident in or at least have a winner at the moment. This is the one I'm most confident in. And it makes sense. They're the second biggest favorite on the board. I mean, they're only minus 500 on the money line, Alex. Only laying $5. And of the 8 remaining teams, I have Houston as the clear number 8 of the 8 remaining teams. And look, it was a great performance last week. After they looked awful on offense for 28.5 minutes, that one play, the ill-timed snap that Stroud bailed him out, made a brilliant play on to over the middle to Hutchinson, really got Houston going. And from there, they destroyed the Chargers the last 32 minutes of the game. I know Herbert imploded, but they still beat them up. That's not going to happen here today. I just don't see that yet. And also, too, how is that so far through all these games in the playoffs, Alex? That's the one over we've had so far in this postseason. And that game was the deadest under of all time for about 27.5 minutes. But Houston won that game by 20. I really don't see a path unless if we get some really weird rust. Like, look, it's possible. Kansas City starters haven't played in 25 days since that win over Pittsburgh on Christmas. But I don't see it. I don't see the Chiefs blowing this game. It's so funny, Alex. Like, until Patrick Mahomes showed up in that 2018 season, like, Kansas City was known as the franchise. Like, this is the type of game Kansas City would lose for most of their existence. Like, we saw it with the Mariota play, the no punt game. The game against Pittsburgh in the ice. Like, throughout their history, before Patrick Mahomes showed up, they would lose the big games. This thing's like, it would take something crazy for Houston to pull this upset. But if Houston pulls this upset, Alex, then the winner of the game tomorrow gets home field and is going to be a nice size favorite in the AFC title game, even with a monster upset potentially here. Again, I don't see it happening. I'm excited to watch all 4 of these games because we're down to 8 teams. 2 of them will be in the Super Bowl, right? And I want to see the Chiefs now fully healthy. They have their full offense, right? We have Hollywood Brown. We have Hopkins. We also have Isaiah Pacheco, who has not really done a whole lot since he has come back from injury. So coming back from an extra week or 2 of rest here, I'm excited to see what they put together offensively. But you're right. I really don't see this upset happening. And you did call for the Texans last week. You said too many people were on the Chargers, and they took advantage. It was a year too early for the Chargers, and the Texans took care of business.
You're giving me a little too much credit there because
you were really trying. I know you wanted.
I did bet the Chargers, but well, we did mention last Saturday, like it did scare it, and it scared you too, that we didn't know a single person on Houston last week, which is usually the telltale sign that probably is a good side here. We do know some people on Houston plus the points, like our friend Frank is on Houston, which might be the scariest sign of all that he's betting an underdog here.
Yes.
But, it's so interesting, this matchup, because, again, we saw this matchup the week before Christmas, and that number peaked at 4. We're 4.5 points heavier here than we were about 30 days ago. Now, Houston, the big injury to Tank Dell plays in. The fact that their defense before last week had really struggled. The fact that C.J. Stroud had looked pretty bad as well until really that play the last 30 minutes of last week. But it is interesting that this line is significantly larger than it was a month ago. Yeah, significant injury on the Houston side, but it's still, we normally, especially if it's not a quarterback, we don't see this type of difference when the game is played 30 days apart here, Alex.
And I do think it is warranted, right? Because if you're going to give the Chiefs a little bit of extra for the rest and then give the Texans, kind of cancels out for the revenge there. But Andy Reid, I mean, him already seeing a team makes me even more confident about the Chiefs there. But that kind of led right into some of the props that I did play today as well, because the Chiefs shut down their run game last time they played. 84 rushing yards for Houston total in that game. But I'm really looking at Joe Mixon under 2.5 receptions. And you can get plus money still on that, plus 110. I already talked about Mixon being a little bit banged up. He had 2 targets for 1 reception in the first matchup, and the Chiefs are really good at not allowing running backs to get receptions. So they allowed just 9 rushing touchdowns to running backs, 0 receiving throughout the season. They gave up the 5th fewest receptions to running backs throughout the year. So looking at his receptions under 2.5 at plus money. And then if there's a player that you want to target on the Houston side, I would look at one of the tight ends, if it is not the backup, if you want to go way down the board. But look at Dalton Schultz. That was his biggest game of the last 4. He did have 45 yards and a touchdown against Kansas City, and they have given up the most yards to tight ends in the league. So his number right now is 38.5, minus 120. I like that one a little bit more, but if you're looking for a plus price, his receptions is 4.5, and it is plus 125. Because really, I mean, he's got to be their second guy after Nico Collins, right?
You know, it's interesting with Houston of just how the distribution will go. Again, no Dell, as we know, is the season done with ripping up his knee.
In that game.
Mixon limited all week as well in practice. What was the number? What was the final number you got on Schultz there, Alex?
38.5 is yards.
Okay.
And 4.5 is receptions, and that's plus 125. But I did not bet that receptions.
Yeah, so last week, Collins 7 for $122 and a touchdown, bulk of it. The other 2 guys who had 4 catches were John Mechie and Cade Stover. The backup tight end was the one who was involved. Of course, him and Stroud played together at Ohio State. I just have, for this game, this is the hardest prop game of the weekend because Kansas City, now that everyone is healthy, we could get some weird looking stuff. But I see Travis Kelce. I see Travis Kelce here where you're only 52.5 on the receiving yards for Travis Kelce. It's 5.5 receptions. I understand he's not the same guy anymore. I get that. But as we've kind of learned with Kansas City over the last few years, it's go through the motions in the regular season, win the division, get the highest seed get the highest seed possible, and don't unleash anything that you are going to need for the postseason. And for me, you see numbers. I mean, look, again, Kelsey's not the same guy that he was even two years ago. But during these playoff games, you're seeing 7.5s. You're seeing 77.5, 76.5 on the receiving yards. Would it shock me at all if Kelsey goes for one of those classic 8 for 95 and 2 touchdowns in this game? No, not at all. So Kelsey over receptions, Kelsey over on the receiving yards, only 52.5, 51.5. I mean, I would go look to ladder in all honesty. I very happily take a plus 70 at 200 to 1, a plus 80 at over $3. No problem on doing that. And then the anytime touchdown market on Travis Kelce, you got a $1.55 on the plus side. Yep. Yeah, I'm okay with going all in on Travis Kelce here today in this game, Alex. No problem with that with these prices you just don't see.
Well, and to your point, if he does go off, you won't see these prices again throughout the
That's
playoffs.
Also correct.
So if you want to jump in today, you can't really fault you because it's your opportunity now. And if he doesn't get it, I mean, he doesn't get it. But
by the way, real quick, Alex, South Point just went to 9 on this game. So if you want to tease Kansas City, I'm just throwing this out at you right now. There's only 8.5 left in the market, and that's at Circa. So I just wonder, too, and if Vinny happens to come in, which we're not expecting him today, but he may, I'm just curious, how much is teaser protection going on here? Because again, very different teasing 2-3 as opposed to through 3. Hopefully that I actually said that correctly, right? 2-3, yeah. 2-3 through 3. There we go. Yeah, I got that right. No tongue twisters needed, Alex. But be very careful now that it's predominantly 9. Be very careful teasing the Kansas City side. With that said, if you want to tease up the Houston at 15, go crazy. I'm not a big underdog teaser, but if you want to do it, go ahead. I mean, Kansas City doesn't beat anybody by 2 scores except for the Steelers at this point.
And I'm really not either, honestly. But talking through it with my dad earlier this week, I'm like, I really like that. And I'm not even a big middle person because I think it is very hard to try and land in that middle. But we're taking a shot today.
So I want to ask you about the total because we haven't really, that's the one thing we haven't really touched here, which makes me think that neither of us really like it. But 43 down to 41.5 on this, where, again, I understand the move. Chilly, Houston, an indoor team going outdoors to the cold. C.J. Stroud, it's funny, C.J. Stroud, of course, went to college in Ohio, so used to playing in not the greatest of weather, but C.J. Stroud has struggled in colder weather in the NFL. Kansas City, more defensive-minded than they've been in the past, but 41.5 is very low. Like 21-20, like that gets you there. But again, that's a pretty easy Houston cover when it's all said and done. I don't know. I'd be very careful of betting an under, and I'd definitely not strong enough to bet the over in 41.5.
So I made it 43 going into the
right
week.
On the opener.
I haven't taken anything off though, so typically take a touchdown off if there's that 15 to 20 mile per hour winds. You said about 10. Yep. So I don't know if that cold, how much you would take off there, but I can't fault people for getting under that 43. And I mean, even if you made me play it, I think I'd go under. I would not be dying to take this game over. We know Houston's defense. I mean, they have been good, and they will be ready in this one.
They have been, and I'll take a shot at myself here more so than anything. I had them underrated going into the postseason defensively because it had been pretty messy down the stretch for Houston. But last week, I mean, Will Anderson was awesome. The whole secondary, obviously led by Stingley, was great. Yes. Again, I don't know how much, and again, this is 2 straight years now with Houston where the opposing quarterback is blown up on the other side in the wild card round.
Yep.
Flacco, of course, last year, and then this year, Herbert. Go on the road to the 1 seed. Houston was pretty competitive for a good chunk of that game in Baltimore last year, but just couldn't, just too much in the end with the Ravens' talent gap in favor of them a year ago. Again, I think it's kind of the same sort of deal here. But again, I don't want to lay 9. Worst to the number. No, thank you. I'd much rather ride those Travis Kelce props here today, Alex. And I know you'd rather ride your middle that you already have, and the props you said before.
And we'll see how it goes, and we'll get to the other teams that I did tease later on, though, in the show.
Yes, don't worry. We'll have Commanders and Lions coming up, but before noon Eastern comes around, we got to get to some college basketball because there's a nice collection of games coming up at the top of the hour. And let's start in the state of Connecticut first with the two-time defending champions taking on the Creighton Blue Jays. And this one did not make my list initially. Creighton has been a little bit down. Again, the injury to Pops Isaac really playing a big role for Creighton, who's squarely on the bubble right now. Yep. Nice win earlier this week. They really put it on Providence. They beat Butler and Henkel last weekend after a week off, and a nice cover against Marquette the week before. 3 straight covers, by the way. Actually, 4 straight covers for Creighton. 7.5. Again, UConn still dealing with injuries. Huskies not the team they've been in the last few years. I would be very careful with this game. Now, the one thing I will tell you, that total of 146 is a little intriguing because even with the UConn's tempo being a slower tempo, the big difference with the Huskies this year is they are highly inefficient on defense.
Yep.
They are still highly efficient on offense. But that's the big difference between this team and the teams the last 2 years. They were amazing defensively the last 2 years. They're 110th in KenPom in defense. That's bad for a high-end team. Throughout why they're 26th in the country in KenPom. Don't mind looking at that over, especially if you watch in-game and this is a good pace at first and teams aren't making shot. You can go in-game at a lower number, Alex. That would be the look I'd do on this game.
Definitely a lean to the over here. And now it's even dropped because last night I was looking, it was 146.5, getting a better number here. But I was looking at potentially trying to find a UConn team total over. I did not see what that number would be if you can pull it up. But really, you talked about UConn and their pace. Creighton wants to play up-tempo. I mean, they are 104th quickest right now in the country. And their defense, even though they are better than they are offensively, they're still allowing their opponents to shoot pretty quickly in that shot clock. So I think Connecticut can definitely take advantage of that, and we might see a faster paced game than the Huskies usually play at. So it would only be an over for me, and even looking at a maybe team total over for the Huskies.
Can I interest you in 76.5?
76.5.
Can I interest you in that? That okay on UConn?
Let's see what their last few are, but
it's close.
Really, yeah.
It's close. It depends on the pace because UConn really has slowed that pace down the last few games. I mean, a 59 possession against Villanova, 65 against Georgetown, right on about their season average. All right, let's go to a game that has a total nearing that opened 180. And that's Kentucky and Alabama. Bama got stunned earlier in the week at home by Ole Miss. Now, Ole Miss is good, but Bama was a double-digit favorite in the game and lost outright. Kentucky, I gotta give Mark Pope so much credit. I was completely wrong. I thought it was a bad hire. I didn't love those BYU teams, obviously, as we knew last year. But Mark Pope has been awesome at Kentucky, a more veteran-laden team, a team that shoots the 3-ball and, more importantly, defends the 3-ball very well. Still plays at a high-end pace. After the loss to Georgia, it flipped around, won in Starkville against a very good Mississippi State team, and then really controlled the game and covered against A&M earlier this week. Now to get Bama off the loss, Alex, I do like Kentucky. I do like them at home. I think this for home court-wise, at least this year, the only other home court, and this is still numbers of the past, even though they've lost at home this year, Fog Island Fieldhouse for Kansas, we'll get to them later, still more home court, and Cameron Indoor. And that's it this year for home court. And then Rupp Arena comes in at number 3 for Kentucky. And Alex, it's 178.5. You realistically need both teams to get into the 90s to win this. It's not high enough. It's not high enough. This game's going to be an 80 possessioner. It's going to be darn close if it's not. I remember last year, and I know it's different because Cal was there and Pope is there now. If you remember the game last year with Alabama and Kentucky, it was 117-95. They played at Kentucky played at Bama's pace last year. Now Kentucky plays even faster this year. If we go under, so be it. I know it's insane, 178.5, but I like it over, Alex.
I think I'm going to join you. I mean, this got as high as 180, and I kind of backed off then. But now that it's coming back down, we're getting some action on the under there. I do like it at 178.5. Alabama's the fastest team in the country.
Yep.
Kentucky's the second best offense. And like you said, we saw them play to their pace last year. I don't hate that Kentucky bet for you. I don't love the 2.5 though. I would
lay the money line.
Lay the money line there for them just to win outright. I do think it'll be a tight back and forth game between these two.
Yeah, I get it. I know, and look, we've seen Kentucky at home. Like I said, this is a big time home court. At least this year, they already beat Florida. Remember, that Florida game was 106-100 too. So, and that was only 72 possessions. Mississippi State, who doesn't want to play fast. That was these Kentucky scores are outrageous in all honesty. Like that, the 140, 150 earlier in the week against A&M was the low scoring one of the last few games. All right, let's go to Louisville next. Alex, you have a play on this game. Cardinals have been a really nice surprise. Credit right out of the way for Pat Kelsey. They inherited a disaster. They're probably making the NCAA tournament this year for Louisville. They take on Virginia, a program in flux. 15 with Louisville laying it with a total of 130 on this one, Alex.
Probably won't make my board, but I do like the under in this one between these two. So if you're looking at Louisville, they played really fast in their non-con games, but they've really slowed down since playing against ACC teams. Virginia's got some home revenge. We know that they play at a very slow pace. So rather than, I think that 15 is right, even if you give Virginia a couple points for that home revenge. But I think that they will step up defensively and really try and control the pace in this one and have some success there against the Cardinals. So I do like under 130.
Nothing for me in this game. I actually almost laid the lumber with Louisville, but then you see a 130. Virginia plays ridiculously slow, even though, again, this is not a good Virginia team. All right, let's go to another ACC game, Pitt and Clemson here. So I'm a little aggravated at myself. There was it's coming back a little bit. There's 2.5 in the market. There was 3 last night. Didn't lay it. Got bet up to 4. Now we're back to 3.5 on this game with Pitt, who's coming off losing to Louisville earlier this week at the Peterson Event Center. The ACC is pretty weak, as we have talked about. Clemson's probably the second best team in the league, but this feels like a pretty good spot for Pitt to bounce back. But you're looking at the total in this game, 142.5's out there.
I did jump on 142.5 last night. I still like it here at 142. These are two teams. Clemson definitely defense is much better than their offense. They're also 322nd in pace of play, so just 64.6 possessions per 100. It's very slow. Pittsburgh on the other side, they're right there, average in the middle, but they are coming off a Florida State game where they had to run. So I think that they'll be more than happy to slow it down and play at Clemson's pace in this one. This will make the board. I like under 142 in this one.
142, the under for Alex in this game. I'm just gonna stay out of this game completely. To say the very least. All right, let's look at one more that's going at 9 a.m. here. And Houston, who is red hot right now, red hot Cougars, going on the road here to take on Central Florida. Now, it's funny because Ken Palm still has Houston ahead of Iowa State. I have Iowa State pretty clear-cut number 3 in the country behind just Auburn, and I do have Duke power rated 2, even though I don't fully trust them. This is a great defense, an efficient offense again for Sampson. I still don't have the high-end top scorer. Shouldn't impact them today. I think this total is way too high, personally. And now that we're at 138.5, we need to, in order to get to 139 here to beat us here on this game, Alex, on the total under.
I like the under as well.
We need what? Houston's got to score probably 75 points, 80 points. And Central Florida, even in that scenario, if Houston gets to 80, Central Florida still got to basically score 60. I don't see that happening here today. So I like this thing under. You and I are in agreement here on this under 138.5.
Houston's defense has just been so suffocating. So, I mean, they've really held their opponents to under 60 in all of conference play. San Diego State was the last team that actually scored 70 on them. So, yeah, I would definitely play under 138.5.
I'm a little bit floored. I actually got to make sure that I have that in before we hit the top of the hour here. I'm a little bit shocked at how that ended up getting played there. All right, those are the 9 a.m. games. We'll give you our best plays from the rest of the day a little bit later in the show, but we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, our good friend Danny Burke from Chicago joins us live. We're going to talk Chiefs-Texans. We'll get Danny's thoughts on the late game, and then, of course, our thoughts on the late game Commanders and the Lions, and also Danny's thoughts on the whole weekend ahead. Right here, Sports by the Book, here on a Saturday morning.
Once you've satisfied your hunger, get ready for more of the hottest casino games in Vegas. Our 24-hour, 30-table non-smoking poker room proudly hosts all the most popular poker games with a variety of betting limits. Visit the poker room for a schedule of daily tournaments. Whether you're going to hold 'em or fold 'em, the best place for poker is at South Point Casino. You'll notice that our craps tables are usually the loudest in the casino. If you've never played, join one of our free craps lessons to find out what makes this game so exciting. Check with the craps dealer for schedules and give it a roll. Bingo is also an exciting way to spend your time. We offer 7 sessions of bingo every day. Bingo! And each session includes a cash ball jackpot, 12 bingo games, a progressive double action game, and a $10,000 bonus coverall. Electronic units are available. If you haven't played bingo with us, give it a try today. Guests can also get in on the action at our one-of-a-kind race and sports books. 2 separate rooms designed to maximize your experience and comfort. Our sports book, with over 400 seats, puts you right in the middle of the action, 24 hours a day. The friendly ticket writers are happy to help, and it's conveniently located next to the famous Del Mar Deli, where you'll find supersized portions of delicious deli items like roast beef, pastrami, and Reuben sandwiches, or soups, salads, and pizza. Plus spectacular desserts fit for a king. And right next door is the race book. Over 150 seats, each with its own TV screen. There are 16 interactive player terminals, so you can bet right from your seat.
Welcome back in. It's Sports by the Book. Jeff Parles, Alex White, alongside. Happy to be with you as always. And now joining us, our good friend from the city of Chicago, stochastic odd shopper, where you can find our good friend Danny Burke's work. It is our good friend Danny Burke with us right now. DB, good morning. Always a pleasure, man.
Yeah, likewise. Appreciate you guys having me on. Getting ready for some playoff football action, so no complaints on this end unless we get some duds like we kind of did in the first round. But hey, there were a couple good spots here and there. But, again, football, can't complain.
Well, Danny, when there's a problem with the format, oh no, we're only doing that for college football this year. Sorry
right.
on that. All right, Danny, let's go to the first game. It's pretty much 9 across the board out here now. The only Vegas book that's not at 9 is Circa. In your neck of the woods, DraftKings is still at 8.5 on this game, but Kansas City's up to 9 here. 41.5 on the total. Danny, what are you looking at traditional wise, and what other props may be popping for you in this game?
Yeah, I'm feeling a little bit less confident in this bet. And Jeff, it's kind of like one of those classic plays. You and I talk about it all the time where, if you do one thing, then something's going to happen. If you don't do it, another thing's going to occur. And that's kind of what I feel like in this situation. I did take 8.5 with the Houston Texans. And yes, part of it has to do with the fact that Kansas City just doesn't cover these big numbers. We've seen it time and time again. They have shown us that they really don't keep their foot down on the pedal against these opponents. Now it's the postseason. It's a lot different. They've had time to rest. And they have played against Houston. And in that first game, what I thought was pretty interesting. So, again, Kansas City won that game. They won, by 8 points? I think it was 27-19. What was noteworthy, though, is that Kansas City won the turnover battle 2-0. They committed fewer penalties, and they did very well in the red zone. 3 to 5 opportunities they converted. Houston was just 1 of 3, yet they only won by 8 points. Now, you could look at that and go, all right, well, they dominated in the box score. They should win comfortably and cover, and maybe that's some people's thoughts. My thought process, though, is you have a Houston team that last week, I mean, it wasn't pretty, but they're carrying a lot of momentum from that win. Their defense has been tremendous all year and ranked better in EPA per play, success rate allowed. And I think they can correct those mistakes, with that momentum getting carried over from the wild card spot and keep this game pretty close, at least within that number of 8.5. Again, the biggest difference here for me is the defense that we see out of Houston. And Kansas City has a very good defense themselves, so don't get me wrong. I do think it's going to be a pretty tough day for C.J. Stroud in this offense, and you really got to hope if you're Houston that Joe Mixon can produce enough and come alive. But that Kansas City run defense has been stout. But again, because of all of these reasons, I do think 8.5 is a little bit too much. And as you're noting too, I mean, it's going up to 9.5. So I'm taking my chances here, taking the points with the Texans. But, lo and behold, because I'm doing that, now we'll see Kansas City look like Kansas City of old, kind of like what I was leading with this. Now, because I took the points, I would be shocked if KC just wins by 2 touchdowns. But again, I do think this Houston defense is good enough to keep them within the number. A couple props here that I do like, and I took this one a couple days ago, but if you're still getting it at 30.5, I think it's a good spot. I did DeAndre Hopkins over 28.5 receiving yards. Again, I'd play that up to about 30 in the hook. Our projections have him in the mid-30s for this game. Last go around, he totaled 37 yards on 4 receptions. And the biggest thing here, too, with Hopkins is really, when you look at this Kansas City offense, a lot of the attention typically gets diverted, especially now in the latter half of the year, towards Xavier Worthy, who's been very impactful. He can kill you with his speed in terms of a handoff, swing routes, whatever it may be downfield. And then Travis Kelce. I know it's been an underwhelming year for Kelce, but the postseason is really when he comes alive. And the Texans have been a bit susceptible against the tight end position group. So I think a lot of the attention is going to be on those two guys, which should open up Hopkins at a very low number that's been adjusted because you haven't seen as much from him as we've been accustomed to with Hopkins in the past. So I like him over his receiving yards. Another play for this game in terms of a prop, C.J. Stroud over 34.5 pass attempts. Our projections have C.J. Stroud with the highest pass attempts among all the quarterbacks for this weekend slate at about 36. If you do fall in line with the notion that the spread's going to hold true, 8.5, 9, whatever it may be, the Kansas City Chiefs are going to have control of this game for a large part of it. And the Texans, in order to keep up, are going to have to throw the ball consistently. I also noted how good their run defense had been. So if Joe Mixon can't get anything going effectively on the ground, they're going to be forced to throw it. C.J. Stroud's going to have to create some kind of magic, guys. He hasn't been the same quarterback that we saw him in his rookie year, but they're going to have to rely on him, and I do think he gets over 34.5 pass attempts. Again, our projections really see him a lot higher than that. It may not seem like a lot, just a few, but in terms of what's a narrow edge in these props, it's pretty significant compared to where it's usually at. So that's the other prop I like in this game.
Danny, the Commanders gave us the best game of the wild card weekend, upset the Bucks, and their reward is they get to take on the favorite to win the Super Bowl in the Lions here. They're getting 9 here at the South Point, total 55.5. You like anything side or total or even props in this one?
So I like a couple props. I'll start with that. The first play that I took was Jamison Williams over 3.5 receptions. You got to lay a little bit of juice here at about minus 136, minus 140 range. I've seen it teetering in that realm. Our projections have him comfortably at 4 or above, right around there. So I like Williams getting over that mark. And in the past several games, I think it's been like he's been targeted like 23 times or something like that. He's averaging 5 catches on 7.7 targets in his last 3 games alone. He's gone over this mark in 9 out of 15 games this year. Washington's defense, very weak overall, and I think Williams could expose him. So that's a prop that I like a lot. And it seems like because of Montgomery coming back in the mix, people think that the dynamic duo, Sonic and Knuckles, is going to go back to what we saw all season long. And that very well may be the case. But I still think a certain part of this game plan is going to ease Montgomery back into the mix. I mean, it's a pretty significant injury. Even though he says he's 100%, I'm going to wait to see if that's going to come to fruition. And Gibbs has been on a tear without Montgomery. I mean, this dude's averaging over like 120 rushing yards in the 3 games since Montgomery's been absent. Our projections still see Gibbs getting about 18 carries in this game. I saw his prop for rush attempts at about 14.5. Had some pretty significant juice there at about minus 140, but worth the lay. And rushing yards wise, we have him at about 93. I think his rushing yards prop was in that, mid to lower 80s range. So I think Gibbs still has a tremendous effort against a Commanders defense that's given up 4.7 rushing yards per carry. And then you're looking at them in EPA, they're 28th, success rate 24th. This has been a weak part of their defense all season long. So I think the Lions just completely obliterate them and keep pounding the rock, and Gibbs is still going to be a focal point there. Those are the props that I like, Alex. Man, this spread is tricky because the line just keeps coming down, and I get it. Look, Detroit's banged up on the defensive front, but, man, Glenn has his guys fighting. I mean, PFF still grades him 5th overall, and you look at Washington in terms of PFF grading, 29th overall. That's a huge discrepancy. So Detroit's overcome a lot of adversity, and Washington's just been a team that's been playing above their head, it seems like, every single week, and I do have to give them credit, right? I mean, they keep winning. Daniels is a rookie, keeps finding a way to get these dubs, but it's never been in a clean fashion. It's never really given me conviction or confidence in this team, especially in the second round now against arguably the best team in the NFL. So, hey, if this line keeps coming down, I'm very much going to be tempted to laying it with Detroit. Or, of course, you could look to potentially do a teaser here with the line from 8.5 down to 2.5. Consider a team like the Buffalo Bills if you're getting them at plus 1.5 and tease them up. I think that's a very viable option as well. But definitely like the Lions in this game and would lean toward them covering, even though I may go into the route of a teaser.
Danny, going to tomorrow, the NFC game first. I'm happy I got under 44. That number is long gone now on this game, down to 42.5 on the Rams and the Eagles. Eagles 6-point favorites. It's going to be chilly in Philadelphia. I just curious your thoughts, traditional wise, and again, any props you may have on this game as well.
Yeah, this game has the least action for me as of this moment. I think the line is set pretty appropriately, and I do like the Eagles a lot. Look, this is a team I picked to win it all before the season began, so I'm certainly rooting for them and have some investments in terms of their futures. But look, this defense has been one of the best in the National Football League all year long, and it's just, if you can avoid the ridiculousness of Nick Sirianni, then this team is just loaded with talent and has the potential to go all the way. And Saquon Barkley had a historic night the first go-around against the Rams. The 2 touchdowns, 26 carries, 255 rushing yards. Matt Stafford has not done good in these elements in the past. And the Rams, a team with talent themselves, yes, but they're a team with a lot of gaps, and Minnesota got exposed by them last week. But I don't think when you look back at it, that was that surprising, because Minnesota was a team filled with red flags like they've been in years past. They win these games, but again, not giving you that confidence, much like I was alluding to with the Commanders. The same could be attributed to the Vikings, and the same to a certain extent can be applied with the Rams. It's just, the Rams defense isn't as good as they looked last week. And I think the Eagles, especially on that ground attack, are going to expose that in these conditions. And what we saw with A.J. Brown last week, I actually do expect a pretty good bounce back game from A.J. Brown, who did really well the first go around against the Rams. A secondary that's very weak in EPA. I think they're 28th against the pass. They are very, very liable in that regard. And A.J. Brown, 6 receptions, 109 yards, 1 touchdown. I like him with his props, especially to find the end zone for an anytime touchdown score. I think A.J. Brown's a good look, but props to you for getting that total. I certainly would have bet it at the number you had it. Now it's just a stay away for me. But again, it's a small lean toward the Eagles. Probably will get some props at some point tomorrow, but right now I don't really have that much action, but definitely will be rooting for Philadelphia.
Let's go to the big game, AFC matchup between the Ravens and the Bills. People are saying that the Bills are a home dog, but I mean, it's really a pick 'em. Here at the South Point money line, minus 115 for Baltimore, minus 105 for Buffalo. What do you like in this one, Danny? Who's going to win this to move on to the championship?
I like the Buffalo Bills in this game, and I get it. Look, the projections, the analytics, everything always is enamored with Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. I completely understand. But time and time again with Lamar Jackson, they have shown us in these games that, in the postseason, he doesn't really come through. And that's not all his fault. And you can make the argument, yes, Josh Allen and the Bills, they've also fallen short. But if you're putting the Bills in an underdog role at home, I mean, that's not the sole reason I'm taking it, but it just seems so hard to neglect that. Buffalo with their offense has been outstanding. And Baltimore's defense, yes, they are better than Buffalo. And Buffalo on the defensive side themselves have their gaps against the run. We saw that exposed earlier this year. Derrick Henry completely carved them up, and they're going to look to do the same thing. I get that. It's just, Josh Allen, to me, is clearly playing his best year, and they have a ton to prove. And you have that revenge narrative from earlier this season. I love that they already played, and they know the mistakes that they can capitalize on right now. And it just seems like the Ravens are becoming that darling team. While the Bills are still there, too, they're just not getting as much love that Baltimore is getting right now. And obviously, that doesn't matter how it plays out. But if you're looking at kind of like, the public versus where everybody else is going, it just seems so hard to ignore the Bills in this spot. So I do like Buffalo in this game. Again, I wouldn't hate the idea of teasing them up if you're getting +1 in the hook, which I do see, a couple books, but you're getting it looks like, ESPN bet has them out here and Fanatics, if you're even able to bet on those books, to be quite honest. But those are the two that have it out in my neck of the woods if you want +1 in the hook. But yeah, I do like Buffalo in this environment at home, catching the point. 1.5, wherever you're getting it. And I do like a prop a lot here as well. I took Isaiah Likely under 3.5 receptions, -$132 is what I laid. He stayed under 4 receptions in 13 out of 17 games this year. Buffalo is allowing opposing tight ends about 5 catches per game, but as we all know, Likely's battling it out with Mark Andrews. And Mark Andrews is going to take a lot of those looks. Over the last 4 games, he's got 19 targets compared to Likely's 13. Our projections have him just at about 3 catches for Likely. So if you still have that prop available, I think you should take a stab at Likely under 3.5 catches, even though you're laying a little bit. But that is the other play that I have in this game, Likely under the receptions. And I'm big on the Bills this weekend. Can't wait to see what Josh Allen can do against this Baltimore Ravens team.
Danny, real quick before we let you go, national championship game on Monday. I am not hedging my Notre Dame tickets. That has been completely decided. No reason to. You know what? I've already won with Notre Dame 3 times in this tournament. I'm good. I have my profit. If they win, it's just gravy on top of everything for this tournament with Notre Dame bets. But down to 8 across the board. The total got smacked yesterday as low as 45 in some spots to the under. It was 46 basically for a week. What are your thoughts here? Of course, Ohio State, 8-point favorites with this game in Atlanta against Notre Dame.
Yeah, I still would lean toward the under in this spot here, Jeff. I mean, the way that I'm looking at it, and I haven't done anything, and I don't know if I will, because I grew up a Notre Dame fan. I'm diehard Nebraska after I went there, of course. So I want Notre Dame to win as a fan, but from a numbers perspective, from a pure betting perspective, it's just, can you really envision Notre Dame keeping up with this Ohio State offense? And at the same time, is Ohio State's offense going to be able to do enough to get past the Fighting Irish's defense? I think to a certain degree they will. Right? I mean, realistically, they're going to be able to find some kind of offensive momentum. I don't trust Riley Leonard and company to do the same, because Ohio State's defense, you and I were talking about this a couple weeks ago. I mean, they are one of the best defenses in the country, and they have shown us that all season long. So we've seen Notre Dame struggle with their offense in the past against Indiana. You could talk about that first game. And then last week, they've made these second half adjustments, which has been great. And that's probably going to be the case this go around as well. So I wouldn't hate the idea of looking at Ohio State first half, maybe something with Notre Dame in the second half. But I think Ohio State does come out guns a-blazing, and they'll have some good trickery up their sleeves on the offensive side to get stuff going. So I would look at a better number with them in the first half. And again, I like this under because, Notre Dame's defense is the reason they've been able to stay in these games. They're going to be able to contain Ohio State at some point, whether it's in the beginning stages or second half. And then Ohio State's defense, I really envision them just limiting Notre Dame for all 4 quarters. So hopefully it's more exciting than I'm predicting it to be. But, man, I think it could be a potentially pretty big letdown for Notre Dame here. That feels like their last game was almost like their national championship, where Ohio State's had this narrative the whole time. They're more talented. And as much as I dislike Ryan Day, hey, he got him here, and this is a spot for them to finally do it all.
He's Danny Burke, Stochastic, Odd Shopper, Danny Burke 5 on the tweets, where you can find him. You can find him every once in a while on this show as well. DB, pleasure, man. Enjoy the weekend.
Yeah, likewise, guys. Appreciate you having me on. Take care.
Absolutely. Danny Burke, everyone. All right, we will keep it right here. Well, Vinny in about 10 minutes from now. In the meantime, though, Alex, we got the second game on the NFL slate to break down, you and I, and I think I'm going to be rogue comparison to everybody else on this game. The Commanders on the road taking on the Lions. Lions Super Bowl favorites. Yes, hell is not frozen over yet, but it very well may in a little less than a month in New Orleans. Lions 9 in this game. This has been an interestingly bet game, Alex. There was our friends over at the Westgate, when the Commanders when Gonzalez doinked in the field goal about 4 minutes after that, Jeff Sherman, John Murray and company opened this game 10.5. And that 10.5 did not last. It was immediately bet down to 9.5. And that's where it stuck, 9.5 the whole week. Behind us here at the South Point, opened 8.5, has been on 9 since Monday. And it's so interesting to see how this game's going to get bet. There's some 8.5 back in the market now, which I'm interested on. We'll ask Vinny this when he comes in. Teaser protection, I think, is going to play a role potentially in how this game gets lined and how the books end up moving this game, Alex. But 9.55.5 highest total by margin this weekend here in the NFL. The Lions just play those high scoring games, right, Alex?
Yeah, I still think that's a little bit high. I mean, we saw last week with the Washington Commanders, they can really stretch out their drives. And then if both teams are going for fourth down, if it's a bad fourth down day, and it's not going to be that high scoring. I think that's a little aggressive. I actually played this a little bit kind of a cop-out, and if what you're about to say pans out, it's not good for me. I took the Lions, even money, to win the NFC. The best number you can get is here at the South Point. I saw -105, -110 at other shops. So if you rolled over the Lions money line in this one, and then whoever they play next week, if it's the Eagles and they're about a 4-point favorite, you wouldn't get quite the buyback you would if you just take them today money line to win the next 2 games. So that's how I am playing this one, and I am on the Lions, and hopefully what you see happening does not happen today for my future bet there.
Yes, I am on my own little island here. Not only did I take the points with Washington earlier this week, I am on the outright upset here. Now, we've not had an upset of this magnitude in the NFL playoffs since the 2019 season. That was Lamar Jackson's first MVP. We know what happened. Derrick Henry and company marched into Baltimore and really put it on the Ravens in that game. Baltimore was a bigger favorite than Detroit is currently in that game. Again, I don't know. I'm just trying to recreate that day. That was such a good betting day because I was on the Titans that day for me, maybe.
You had the Packers last year against the Cowboys. They were
not as big as this, though.
Okay.
This is
7.5, maybe.
I think it closed 6.5 because Evan Abrams earlier this week. There's not been a 7.5 or more that is lost. I think it closed 7 technically with that Green Bay. That was a good one too.
Yeah, for you.
Talk about a no sweater. In all honesty, for a touchdown underdog. So look, I get the numbers against Washington here. They are bad against the run, as Danny pointed out. They are bottom 5 in explosive runs allowed, which Detroit. Number 2 in the NFL in explosive runs. Excuse me, number 3. You know who's ahead of them? Philadelphia and Baltimore. Makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So you have an explosive run game against a run defense that struggles. I get it. Could we get a game where Gibbs and Montgomery, if he looks healthy, have a huge day, and I get run out of the building here because Washington can't stop the run? Yeah, of course. Lions are the best team in the NFL this year. It's more than possible they win this game big. But here's the argument for Washington here. And we kind of saw the blueprint last week. And this is also why I would actually lean to the under as well in this game. Don't have the fortitude to bet the under because it's the Lions offense in this game. But this is also why I would lean to the under. What did Washington do last week well, even though they didn't pay them off all the time? Long, time-consuming drives that kept the opposing offense off the field. And Washington is as good as anyone in the NFL of having drives of 5 minutes or longer this year. It's just the way that they play. Good run game, run first quarterback. Obviously, generational year on fourth down for Washington, around an 80% clip, including last week, even with the 2 big failures a week ago. This is the type of game where if you're Washington and you shorten the game, limit possessions. If we get a game here like last week, remember why? There were only 14 total possessions in that game last week. Everyone's got to be highly efficient in order to play in a low possession game like that. And you get a Jared Goff turnover, you cash in these long drives. 9 is a lot in a game that I think is going to be a low possession game because of the way these offenses play. And you know what? Jaden Daniels is ready for this moment. He was awesome last week. I know they didn't convert those 2 fourth downs, but they cashed in the one they needed. They got in field goal range. They didn't give Tampa the ball back when they got the ball back with a little under 5 minutes to go last week. We're going for broke on this one. We'll take the big money line price. We'll take the 9. Honestly, if you want to tease Washington to 15, I don't have a problem with that either. Be fully prepared for Detroit to win this game by 3 touchdowns then, since I'm so convinced that Washington plus the points is the best bet of the weekend in the NFL, and I like them outright with a bloated price here today.
Maybe you can pull up their schedule and what the final score was, but my biggest concern here, even backing Washington and taking the points, is when we saw them really step up against the elite teams. When they played the Eagles, they were outgained 6.2 to 4.2. Oh, they lost by 8 in that one. And
the second Eagle game real quick, because I did have this in front of me, actually.
Yes.
That Eagle defense, they did put 6 yards per play on them in the second go-around. So much better than that first game. Remember, that first game was a weird one. That was Washington got outplayed and was leading going into the fourth quarter. Then Saquon Barkley took the game over, which, what are you going to do? And by the way, if Washington does pull the shocker, I do not like them next week in Philadelphia, assuming that is the matchup. If it's Rams Commanders, hold on to your hats. I have no idea at that point. But I like where your head's at, though.
The other one is Baltimore, if you want to look at that one. And they were outgained 7.4 to 5.4. And then the Ravens kind of let them hang around, and they scored 10 in the fourth quarter, we could have. So
you just kind of actually made my point, and Chris made this point last week. The 9, forget the money line. Yeah. The 9, you don't have to be overly competitive to cover 9 in the NFL. You just have to hang around. Now, remember that Baltimore game closed 7, actually closed 7.5. So the late numbers, if you got them, you won with.
Yes.
But that was one that was, again, landed the touchdown. You're right. Washington got mostly outplayed in that game. But again, I don't know. The Lions are my number 2 power rated team. I have Kansas City power rated ahead of them. I have the Lions and Philly legitimately tied as the same power rankings, which would lead me, assuming if it is Detroit Philly, I'm betting Philly next week. I already know that. But we'll see. I can't get those long possessions out of my head, though, Alex. Yes. I think this is one of those games where, and again, I lean to the under, too, because of that. Long, limited possession games make it very hard to go over totals in the high 40s. Forget totals in the mid 50s. Like, that's real. Like, you need a lot of possessions in order to get over 55.5 in this game, regardless of how efficient these offenses are.
I don't blame you at all. My real number is Lions 7. Okay. And then I just gave them a little bit 2 to get to the 9 to stay away from the spread just for the time off and the rest time. But yeah, I mean, really looking at my raw number, it would be more of a play on the Commanders taking the points than anything.
Let's bring him in. Our good friend Vinny Magliulo is here. The hair is perfect as always.
Well, listen, you got to be consistent.
It's almost as perfect as the start at Rupp. Great start for our over, by the way, Alex. 28-28. with 9 minutes to go in the first half, and this game is well on its way to 80 possessions, by the way. So
I had to take it off the board because I forgot it would already be started.
It's okay.
So I didn't want to.
Top two,
But yes,
top two scoring teams in the country, 1 and 2,
and
Alabama and Kentucky.
Yeah, they're pretty darn good offenses.
It's a good one.
It's been a great game to kick it off. But Vinny, I want to go to these NFL games, and I want to ask you something that I meant to bring up yesterday, but I didn't.
Okay.
The teasers, which you mentioned yesterday, this is going to be a monster teaser week.
Yes.
And it already has been. Is there any thought of quote-unquote teaser protection from your side of the counter at all when it comes to lining these games where we're up to 9 now on Kansas City? You've been stuck on 9 on the Detroit game. I know there will be people that come in and tease it down to 3 because, of course.
Sure.
But from a bettor's perspective.
Or tease it down to 2.
Or tease it down to 2 with a 7-teamer, or 7-pointer, I should say. But is there any thought when booking these games into that, especially when you know it's going to be a hectic teaser week?
Well, the thing about, first of all, in terms of teaser protection for the house, your side of the counter is not going to care. You care about protection, right? And you shouldn't, and that's fine. From our side of the counter, and this is, there are different philosophies too. I mean, there are folks out there that'll limit teasers or not take them, and I think that's bad business, frankly. But again, every operator has their choice. You want to be consistent. I mean, it's very difficult to say to someone that they've been, betting teasers all year, and now here they are, the biggest games of the year. It would be hypocritical to say that you're booking these games for all the money that you're booking them, and it's almost disrespectful to do that. So, but as far as actual protection, there's line movement, Jeff and Alex. There's and then maybe there's something on the straight bets. You just have to keep writing tickets. Now you realize that, are there, Chiefs and Lions more Chiefs and Lions teasers? Yeah, I mean that's just it. But they still have to come in, and again, line movement. So you're also, there's juice with them. Don't forget, you're laying a price as a customer, up to $1.50 on a 7-point teaser. So the protection, if you will, is that we're the house, and if you're going to bet those 2 team favorite teasers today, right, or even underdog teasers, right, you're paying a premium for them. Now, in fairness too, and I'll put it out there, ours are 10 cents cheaper than a lot of other places. As you know, you see $1.60 or more out there. So again, it's a good question, but it's also about writing business, and it's action, and action creates action. So it's always good when you're the house to have action.
That's right. So Chiefs, a little bit of money on them today?
Yeah, last night and this morning, and when we were on yesterday, we were talking about, with Jimmy Vaccaro, and, it seemed a little quiet, but there was a lot of mobile action, as we call them, the phones, and business all night long. So folks, again, not just the visitors here on a holiday weekend, but also our locals who are, coming in and or on their mobiles or mobile apps, betting these games. So more Chiefs action. That's why yesterday we were on at 8. We were 8.5, and now here we are at 9. Could we go higher? It's possible. That's the other thing. Like to Jeff's question, could we see 9.5? It's very possible. We could certainly see 9.5 in the Lions. If there's, depending on what happens in this Chiefs game, don't forget there's going to be continuous rollover now, right? As we get into today's games and heading into tomorrow.
Well, it's interesting because there's a lot of 8.5 in the market now on the Detroit game, which is the complete opposite of what I anticipated happening this morning. I kind of expected it to be like you're saying, where it'd be a one-way traffic on Detroit, maybe even see that 10 again, and then once the 10 hits, then it would disappear and probably be sitting at 9.5 most of the day.
Well, some of the other protection too, and the reason for that is of the two dogs, the dogs that's getting more money line action is the Commanders than the Texans. So, you can also maneuver the money line price too, where you don't want to give away too much. And again, look at the Detroit Washington straddle, 550 for the favorite on the Lions and plus 4.25. So that's a good price on the dog there. You can maneuver that way too, right? To say, all right, I'll take some here now. Could both teasers still come in? Could the Lions win the game by 6? Sure, but you're also picking up that money line action too. And then if the Commanders win the game, you don't want to give away too much. But if the Commanders win the game, obviously you're killing all the Detroit teasers.
Well, not only that, you're also, I would imagine, for the future book, part of it too, where I know you guys have had months to balance it out, but
the thing about it too is, though, remember this: the Lions were one of the favorites, right, going into the so there's typically not as much liability when you look at these 4 games. There's going to be more future book liability on let's say the Texans, right? Even though they were favored to win their division, they were not a huge price either, right? But there'll be, the Chiefs were the favorites, right? And there was, the Ravens and the Bills were right there as well. We knew the Lions were going to be favored, but look, the Commanders were not favored in their division. It was always about the Eagles and the Cowboys, right? Probably the longest odds there were the Rams, and then as the season started, it didn't bode well for them either. So even now, you look at the future prices and who are the longer prices. If you look at the exacta prices, right, the longer ones are the Commanders and the Rams.
Vinny, before we get out of here, and then we'll get Alex's plays on the whiteboard as well. College hoops, we talked about it a little bit yesterday. A zillion games going on. Yeah. Honestly, just the way this started, obviously you're getting this mega battle in Lexington right now. But the defending champs also in action right now. Actually, Creighton's ahead in that game about 7 minutes ago in the first half. Houston.
They bet Creighton in that game, by the way.
Houston right now actually is in a 9-point hole against Central Florida early as well. Yeah. So, again, a lot of fun and a lot of good games coming later in the day as well.
So you look at today, right? And here we've got, let's say, about 150 games. That's 150 first halves, 150 halftimes, 150 money lines, some in-game on a lot of these key games. So it's a great day for the house too, which that's part of our protection too. Put up more, and that's something that in my transition, 40 years ago from table games to the book was, to get more rolls of the dice, so to speak, more hands out of the shoe. 40 years ago, you didn't have. Well, first of all, we weren't booking a lot of these games to begin with, much less the first halves and the half times. Right. Before your time, both of you. Alex, your grandpa and your dad's, they know what I'm talking about. But so that's also protection, if you will, Jeff. That's the more games, the more choices, the more action.
By the way, the live total in Alabama and Kentucky is 184.5, which it's only so high you can go.
Well, I mean,
what did you close that on? At 179.5?
178.5. Okay. Here at South Point. So which was right around where it opened, 178, 179. But when you look at the pace of this game, and again, you've got, like I said, the top 2 scoring teams in the country, and you look at Odom. He insists that they have to shoot at least 35 threes a game. That's his style. And Kentucky's not far behind.
No, not at all.
With Mark Pope.
Not at all. 34-30, 5:55 to go in the first half. All right, Alex, what do we have on the whiteboard here for later in the day?
Well, if people want an over for later in the day, I'm going Santa Clara and Gonzaga over in that game. Gonzaga plays fast 70.4 possessions and 104th offense. And then Santa Clara's defense is out of the top 100. So we're going over 162.5. I went over 61, over 161 last night. And under, though, Iowa State and West Virginia. West Virginia's defense is good. And I think you have something on this one as well. But Iowa State, been more offensive this year. Now in conference, we're really starting to see their defense turn it on. I think that number's too high at 137.5. I threw in the Lions to win the NFC because I've got it in pocket. And then Notre Dame team total under 17.5 in case that drops before the show on Monday.
So West Virginia is not an official play, but plus 6.5 does feel pretty good on them. Go against Iowa State off of that just throttling of Kansas earlier in the week. But betting against Iowa State has been a fool's errand this year. They are just playing at an obscenely high level right now. The biggest plays that I like later in the day, I actually am on that same Gonzaga-Santa Clara game. I actually like the points with Santa Clara. I also like your over as well. I don't expect much defense to be played. Only concern with that, Gonzaga, of course, upset earlier in the week by Oregon State.
Yep.
But I don't know. That's a lot of points for a Santa Clara team that is, even with the lackadaisical defense, they are very good on offense. Yes. And I don't love that Gonzaga defense. Which also then brings me to my other one, and make sure you bet the proper number. Well, you don't want to just move completely on me. I laid 3 with San Francisco against Oregon State for the exact reason to go against the Beavers. The market moved it to 3.5. I still think it's okay at 3.5. Don't love going through one possession, but that is a brutal spot for Oregon State going on the road to the Hill against a good San Francisco Don team. So that is the other one. See if it comes back to 3. I don't think it will, but I still think you're okay at 3.5 on San Francisco for that one. All right. We did have a 2-way action game, but I wasn't strong enough I wasn't strong enough on Oregon.
Please, can't have this one.
And Alex is not
even Ann, she knows. She loves that 2-way action.
We need to get the T-shirt, Vinny.
I know, right?
We need to get the T-shirt here.
Who's in charge of wardrobe? Who's in merchandise?
Might be Frank, which really means we're in trouble then.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, then we'll get the over shirts.
Yeah, we'll get we'll get 2 thumbs up for the over for all the time for that. All right, Vinny. Pleasure as always. Alex,
good job, everybody.
Good work. Good luck. Oh, no. Well, I hope the Commanders win, but everything else win on that. Drew Doggan, thank you as always. I'm Jeff Parles. We're back at 9 a.m. tomorrow. We'll check in with Philadelphia tomorrow as well. John Jansen joins us. We'll check in with him. We'll get all the college hoops, everything else. And also we'll take a deeper dive in Notre Dame and Ohio State as well on tomorrow's show. Right here, Sports by the Book here at the South Point Studio.